Oh, so, excuse me. So, I've already been working on this a little bit, but basically, and it's glitching out. Anyway, what I've been working on is what's meant to be a historically, or somewhat historically accurate rendition of, uh, Jeanne d'Arc's armor. And, like I said, I'm just been working on that. And I'm gonna continue working on it today. Hopefully finish it. And it's glitching out again. I'll be back. Okay, you got it working. Or I thought I did. Why isn't it working now? I keep having some weird glitches. Anyway, I've just been trying to draw. I'm just trying to get this as historically accurate as I can. And part of that is making sure the armor is right. Now, it's not a well-known fact, but Jeanne d'Arc, when I was looking into her armor and what it was she wore, she actually had a custom set of plate ordered for her, or commissioned, I should say, by Charles VII of France, who was the King of France at the time. And so because her armor had to be made specifically for her, it's actually technically a myth that she willingly chose to wear male armor. Because, well, if you have a woman, if someone have armor made for her by someone, it's going to have to match her dimensions. And because it had to be specifically commissioned for her, that then raised the question for me of, well, why was she accused? And it turns out, part of the reason she was accused is there was a tradition, and it's glitching out again, but there's a tradition in France at the time, and not just France, but many other places from the sounds of it, where basically, if you had a loss of some kind, knights would, if you were a knight and you lost a battle of some kind, you had to surrender your armor. Which is kind of a weird tradition in my opinion, but anyway, and the reason I bring that up is Jeanne d'Arc, who was calling herself Jean the Maiden, she had to give up her armor at the Church of St. Denis, if I remember correctly. Now, we don't know where that armor is now, but we do apparently have the helmet, or at least they have the helmet over in France. Something like that. Mm. And anyway, as I was saying, when you're in battle and you lose your armor, you gotta find new armor. And well, you're gonna get armor from your enemy if you have to. And that was kind of what Jean had to do. However, that's where it kind of gets weird. So, basically, at some point, when she was captured, she actually wasn't captured by the British. She was actually captured by other French, specifically French rebels, during the 100-Year War. And those rebels were part of a dukedom within France known as Burgundia, I think it was. And so because of that, there was some confusion that kind of ended up being created in the modern times because of it. So the Burgundians, their duke, wanted to essentially secede from France, and his name was Philip the Good. Now, his son takes a better approach, but that's a history for a different time. Now, I'm not a historian. One, I'm just gonna state that now. Two, this is all I've just found on the internet, not using ChatGPT, but just the information I've been able to find on the internet. And specifically, I've been cross-referencing Wikipedia and the Saint Jeanne d'Arc website. Because yes, she has her own website. And from that website, I've been able to learn some things. But I also had to do research into what early 15th century plate armor looked like. And because that's what she would have worn. And it's similar to what I'm drawing here. But anyway, going back to now, with that disclaimer aside, going back to what I was saying. So, Philip the Good decided to work with the British with the specific purpose of basically getting a part of France to himself, and he would become a king. And because he would become a king, he was basically in rebellion. Now, why he wasn't executed for his betrayal to the French crown, I will never know. Because, like I said, he was the one who captured Jeanne d'Arc. And he was the one who would eventually give her over to the British so that they would execute her. And that's kind of where some of the controversy comes from. Because despite his title, Philip the Good, as he was known as, I'm pretty sure gave himself that title. And the reason I say that is he wasn't exactly a good dude. If you look at his Wikipedia page, he only has one son from his marriage, and then like 15 other children from 15 different mistresses. So, yeah. Not exactly a good Christian dude. Mm. Mm. Why does that suddenly feel off? I'm gonna redo this leg. I'm gonna have to get a new Uh, mm, uh, anyway, I'm gonna have to get a new drawing tablet one of these days. Anyway, so yeah, uh, I don't really like Philip the Good because he wasn't exactly a good person. Like I said, cheated on his wife multiple times and had multiple mistresses. And yeah, sure, it was normal in France back then, but technically speaking, it's not exactly what they were supposed to be doing. Nor is it okay behavior, even if everyone else is doing it at the time. So, yeah. And then, like I said, on top of that, he was literally trying to stab his king in the back. Then he captures Joan of Arc and then sends her overseas to be burned at the stake, basically. I was doing so well yesterday. Why is it I can't? Hmm. I'll just leave the leg alone for now. And just focus on getting the armor here done right then. Now I think I see the problem. And of course, it keeps doing weird stuff like that. Anyway, so going back to what I was saying, but like I said, so Philip the Good was the one who captured Jeanne d'Arc, which is kind of what led to the idea that France betrayed her, when actually it wasn't France, it was a traitor to France. And instead of ransoming her back to his king, because he was upset that she was beating him at basically every turn, so he was a sore loser, he sold her to, well, I say sold her, which is really messed up. But he ransomed her to the British, because the British wanted her dead too, which is how she ended up being martyred. And when she was taken over, she didn't have the armor that I'm drawing right here, her wearing. She had Burgundian armor. And the reason for that is it probably would have been the armor that fit her best. Now, she took it from one of her enemies. And that's the other thing. Because it was technically French armor, and the king commissioned armor specifically for her to wear, there really wasn't a reason for it to be assumed that armor was specifically for men. I think I might be coming down with something. So, anyway, because she was wearing armor that wasn't originally commissioned to be hers, when she was taken to the British. Well, yeah, there's going to be some other stuff. They assumed that she was a cross-dresser, though, because she was wearing Burgundian armor, which was a different make of French armor. And so, okay, now it's starting to sound a bit better. And so, obviously, that kind of led to some issues. Or not really issues, but more of a Britain trying to use every single thing they could to frame her. And in fact, later, they actually, I believe it was during not War of the Roses, but some of the events in the 100-Year War did lead to the War of the Roses. Her trial was considered so unfair that later they actually went back and pardoned her. However, some of the things that are shown for certain depictions of her okay, now it's freaking out and give me a bunch of issues again. So, anyway, her trial was actually super unfair. And so, that's part of where the idea that she wore men's armor came from, but actually, the truth is, technically she never did it. Well, I mean, technically she never did. Yeah. So, because the King of France basically established that armor was able to be worn by both men and women. And so, because of that, that's probably why a bunch of the Burgundians tried to rebel. Because of one thing or another. Though they were rebelling before she even showed up on the battlefield, so what am I saying? Like I said, not a historian. The only thing I know is Wikipedia and stuff like that. So anyway, uh, so yeah, she was ransomed to the British, and then the British used the fact that she wasn't wearing the armor she had been given to try and accuse her of things she never did. And in fact, uh, according to many eyewitnesses, they actually made her wear, from the sounds of it, British armor and British male wear to her court trial and to try and prove that they had a reason to execute her, which is very sad. And it's part of the reason, they go back later on and oh, that was on my laptop screen. Never mind. Anyway, but that's part of the reason historically they went back and redid her trial and stuff like that. Now, they claim that her hair was cut short. Now, the thing is, according to eyewitnesses, her hair had been cut short, but not in the style of a man's. It was actually more like it was cut a long time ago, and then it had grown out. And so she had short, shaggy, kind of messy hair, according to eyewitness testimonies. And this was from her time in court. There isn't, as far as I understand, many descriptions of her outside of that I can find, and that's if that I can find. However, what is stated is she uh, or what is stated is that, like I said, she did have short hair, but she also her hair wasn't blonde also. That's another thing actually. So I know they romanticize her as having had like uh blonde hair in a bun, but she would have had to have had short hair. One, because of the way armor is, and two, and it's freaking out again. Anyway, and two, not not all women have long hair. And I know they depicted her with blonde hair but it was actually discovered she had black hair, which I don't know why they changed it, but it did. And I don't know. It's kind of like it makes me kind of think of the quote from Free Ren that Free Ren states about how spoilers. The reason no one talked about Himmel failing to pull this hero's sword from the stone is because heroes can't have embarrassing things in their legend or whatnot, or the story of a hero can't have anything embarrassing. Which, if having short, messy hair that's black is embarrassing for a hero, I'm gonna have to say maybe some things need to be reevaluated. But historically, there's nothing to state that she knowingly dressed as a man, because all her armor was custom fitted. And apparently it took 8 weeks to make. And so because it took 8 weeks to make, I'm actually gonna have to. I'm only just now noticing these mistakes that I made. Anyway, so it's very possible that she never even believed she was wearing men's armor at any point. And because the documents, if you even go look at them, you can see they're just looking for a reason to falsely charge her of things. Like, for example, her flag. The British basically thought it was magic or something, and she states multiple times that no, it wasn't magic. She believed it was because of God that she was specifically able to win. And I'm gonna be honest, for a peasant like her to go from peasant to warrior overnight with countless victories, well, not countless, but basically a ton of victories. Yeah, I kind of have to agree with the whole, kind of have to be God helping, because, like, obviously, it's kind of unheard of for a peasant to, with no military training, to give an army that was currently kicking your home country's butts a runaround. Oh, come on. And there we go. It's finally working again. Anyway, So yeah, anyway, she made the British really angry on her debut to the battlefield because they tried to argue that the French were using magics or whatever, and that's why they had a right to French land and whatnot, or something like that. It's complicated. So anyway, so yeah, they accused her of a lot of different things. Basically threatened to kill her if she didn't put on the armor that they claimed she was wearing, and all sorts of crooked and messed up stuff. The armor she had originally was designed for her. But like I said, she had to surrender that because of some weird French tradition. And that's what led to her having to wear the armor of a Burgundian, and then her getting captured, and then ransomed to the British, who then burned her at the stake after failing multiple times over to try and frame her. Now, I don't know exactly what kind of gauntlets she wore, because, man, but with the problems this thing is giving me tonight, I may just call this quits and then unarchive this, and I'll finish the drawing later. Anyway, part of the reason I'm doing this, though, is I have never seen any period-accurate renditions of Jian's armor. And technically speaking, the Fate series isn't accurate. One, because obviously she's blonde, and two, her armor isn't French in design. And again, the Fate series isn't exactly accurate on a lot of things. Hmm. So, on a different note, armor is kind of hard to draw because it has all these different parts. And one thing that was kind of part of armor is, and it's kind of often forgotten about, but historically, medieval armor, the boots had like a kind of like this thing that would go over your shoe, but it would go on top of your shoe before you would lace it, which is kind of interesting. So you would lace the armor plating to your shoe, and then you would put on the rest of it. And that's what helped with flexibility. And what's typically forgotten is that it was plated like this for, like I said, that flexibility. armor also had these, like, fins here that would stick out, and those would kinda... It was meant to cover your joints. Now, I'll probably come back and redo this one later on in the future. Just 'cause it's a bit hard to draw something like this when it's my first time. But I think I'm doing good enough that it'll be good to come back to and learn from. And for this drawing, I am probably gonna leave the flag blank. Just 'cause I don't actually know what she put on her flag, historically. I know she made one herself, and the thing is, on the flag, there's some it's kind of discussed about what she may have put on the flag, which is what makes it interesting. But it did have some religious significance. And I've heard a few suggestions. One is that she had an image of the Lord with two angels on either side of him, similar to kind of how the Ark of the Covenant is supposed to be described in the Bible, which is interesting. I'm trying to zoom. Come on, tablet. Oh yeah, and she also was supposed to have a sword, which that reminds me. So the sword she had was the sword of Saint Catherine, I think, if I remember correctly. And we don't actually know what that looks like, because the British never got it when they captured her. And the reason we know that is they actually questioned her about its location. Now, my personal theory is considering the character of her personality, I think when she had to surrender her armor, she sent it back to the Chapel of St. Catherine. Just because that seems like something she would do. And honestly, I'm not sure I would want the British to have it or keep it on me and risk it, get it taken by, say, someone like the British. Because her trial made it very clear that despite the fact they were trying to accuse her of using magic and claim they were just trying to prevent others from being led astray or something like that, it was kind of clear, at least to me, that that was just something they said on paper. Because in the trial, they kind of sound like they were fishing to see if they could basically use her flag to regain victory, which is weird, but I don't know. People were superstitious back then, and people are superstitious now, so what do I know? Also, her helmet, uh, apparently, according to eyewitness accounts, as I checked to make sure I didn't miss anything. Her helmet, uh, wasn't like other plate helmets, which had something to affix it to the rest of the armor. Hers was the kind that didn't have that. And more than likely, that was just only what they could make at the time. So, Well, at least the eyes and face turned out the way I wanted. And everything else seems to be going good. But yeah. Anyway. Oh yeah. And another thing about the Sword of St. Catherine, while I'm remembering it, because I think I may have forgotten to mention it. All we do know is that it was supposedly an arming sword with 5 crosses on it. Somewhere. And that was how it was identified. And supposedly, Jean came across it by accident, apparently. According to her, the voices of the saints told her where it was. Hmm. Actually, while I'm looking at this, I am just realized I need to raise the armor pieces here. They need to be a bit higher. Now, just now realizing this, but the little fins look kind of like hearts that are meant to protect your joints. Anyway, that's better. Okay. And it's... I should probably just manually zoom in. But... Okay, yeah. I think this is good. Oh, yeah, and this second layer was just a practice layer I was working on. In fact, I am going to delete that layer since I don't need it anymore, and I'll replace it with a layer for color. Oh, yeah. Another thing that's not mentioned is Jean's armor was actually known as white armor, or what is plain armor, meaning it wasn't fancified with anything like gold inlays or anything. It was just forged out armor, no carving or anything, just polished. And That's how they made her armor. Did they ever mention what her eye color was? I just thought about that, but yeah, well, that's something I'm gonna have to figure out. Scroll wheel's freaking out. And actually, okay, now we get to coloring. Hmm. Now another thing I wasn't sure about is if her armor was visorless or not, because it didn't. Like I said, this neck part piece of armor, traditionally, the helmet would link into that, but jeans didn't have that. And like I said, not all pieces of armor had that. So, and some didn't even have visors. But it's something I would need to look into a bit more. I kind of went for the visorless design just because I like the way it looks. But anyway, yeah, it history's always been interesting. Just really interesting. Okay, I think I'm almost done with this. Well, I think that's good for now. And that'll be it for tonight. So, thank you all for enjoying my stream. And I'll see y'all later. And anyone who watches this in the future on YouTube, well, I hope you all have a nice day. And the same goes for you who are, for any of you who are watching this right now. Also, I just realized, uh, I will be going back and getting her eyes colored in once I figure out what her eye color was. But anyway, good day, and I'll see you all later.